I'm not sure why he chose to drink the water out of his boot rather than just drinking it from a stream. And also, how I would love to know how you get lost for 10 days on a 3 hour hike.
My father gave me Montana.
Welcome to the Empty Spaces Outfitters Beyond the Grid Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Breven. I got my co-host, Matthew Bent. In this video today, we're going to be talking about adventure, specifically adventure for beginners and getting out on your first camping trip. So without further ado, I'm turning this over to my camping expert, Matthew Bent. Matt, what do you suggest people bring on their first camping trip who have never camped in their entire life?
Never camped in your entire life? Well, camping really is a pretty straightforward thing. We all do it every single day. We just happen to do it in a house. We've gone out of our way to make this big structure that's our tent. And we have our water source, that's our faucet, and food, and all the luxuries that you could possibly imagine, at least here in the United States. And I hope wherever you're at that you're also taking advantage of some of the luxuries, because, you know, that's part of what makes camping fun. But to dumb it down, that's what makes camping fun, is we're going to take all of what we have on a day-to-day and we're going to move it to a simplistic lifestyle out in the woods. And we make it sound like it's some unique thing, but really it's not. It's you just going out and living a little bit more simply. And so if you're going to go out camping, like this weekend, I'm going camping. I'm going to take a tent, right? Something to keep me dry if it's raining. It also helps to reduce that outside influence so that you can feel a little bit more secure, so that you can rest. And it gives you a place of security as you might desire. But that's not necessary if you're going to go camping. One thing they call going without a tent is cowboy camping. And it's a lot of fun. You got the stars as your cover, and you roll over and you get to see where you're at any time during the night. It's a different experience. So further into that, you want to make sure that you take water, something to drink, preferably water specifically, and enough of it for wherever you're going. I'm going to be camping out of a truck, so I have a little thing of 5-gallon bucket of water, and it's set aside already. Just have to turn the little spigot and I get some water. And then you're gonna get some food, right? And that food could be, literally anything. You just have to know whatever you take out there, you gotta cook. Or whatever you're gonna get, you have to be able to prepare it properly, I should say. So that's a trick, because you no longer have your microwave, your propane stove, or gas stove. You don't have a refrigerator, but those are all things that we could prepare for ahead of time by either getting ready-made meals, right? Dehydrated stuff. That's really great for backpacking specifically. Lightweight, you just add water and go ahead and heat it up. But maybe you want something a little more special. I like to take steaks, burgers, hot dogs, eggs, sausage for the morning, and that all comes down to how do you hold it and take care of it until the day that you're going to cook. And that might come with a cooler. There are like extra expensive refrigerator coolers that you don't have to add ice to. You could also buy the $10 plastic or styrofoam cooler at most grocery stores, and those work pretty well for a weekend if really all you're going out for is for a weekend. So put your food in there, make sure that it's taken care of, and then you're going to need to know how to prepare it while you're out there. That might be a campfire, depending on the fire danger. It's always a good thing to keep an eye on. But another form is a propane stove. Yeah, all sorts of varieties of those, and from little $15 ones off of Amazon to these big massive grills that are hundreds of dollars. That they work really great. They're kind of like your kitchen stove, but they are a lot of work to get out there, and so you just have to know how you're going to cook it, and then a couple of the utensils that you need to cook it with. So once you get all that, now you have your food, your water, your shelter, right? You're going to want to be relatively warm. That temperature outside is regulated off of the sun, and when it goes down, it can cool off, especially where we're at here in Montana.
So if you bring dogs, obviously you want to bring enough food for their entire trip. You want to bring extra water for them, and then possibly like a Garmin system so you could keep track of them, especially if they wander off. I know we were talking to Chris Powell from the Houndsman XP, and he was saying that you should have a Garmin system on your dogs, especially if they can run, because you want to know where they're at. I mean, personally, I have a dog that runs out, Latigo. She likes to run away. So I got her like a shot collar, and I can set the distance now. So now she can only go like 100 meters, and then she gets beeped, and then if she keeps going, she'll get zapped. Which in my mind is like, you get a warning dog, and then it's time to come home. It's better that you get zapped now than eaten by a bobcat. That's my thought.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And especially where we're at in Montana, we're not at the top of the food chain all the time. There's big animals, and specifically the animals that we take out are not at the top of the food chain. So you want to know where they're at. You want to know that you're being responsible, taking care of them by keeping them, close to the camp, within calling distance, or some way of getting them their attention and bring them back to camp. And it also, you're probably going to be out there around other people, unfortunately. We can't all get to a perfectly secluded spot every single time. So people are going to drive by, walk by, and it's just one of those respectful things to know that you have control over your environment by having control over your dogs. And that shock collar, I'm sure, is very helpful in regards to keeping her close enough to camp that you feel like you have that control.
I'd say, like, especially if you're a beginner too, like the more control you have over the situation, the better off you're going to be. My opinion is when you first go camping or backpacking, this is just my opinion, but I think you should overpack because you don't know what to expect. Obviously, if you're doing a 17-mile hike in one day, one, why are you doing that? But two, you might have to start playing with weight there. But my thought is always, I would rather have a really good experience camping for the first time and overpacking. Like, I might bring an extra pillow. I'm gonna bring everything and the kitchen sink because I want to have a good experience. And when I bring people camping for the first time, I tend to bring things that I know that I would like if I was in their shoes, especially if I'm providing for them, which then you get into the conversation of like, once you've been doing this for a while, you're going to start duplicating the amount of gear that you have because you'll find some things work, some things don't work as well as you'd like them to. And it's not that they don't work, it's just that they don't work as well as you want them to. And then my thought is, you have a guest, you're going to give them the nice thing because you're a good host. And then they're going to have a good experience and they're going to want to keep doing it. But first trip, I recommend overpacking. Well, what does it mean to overpack? Specifically, I think anything outside of like the fundamental systems, so anything outside of your sleeping system, your food and water system, that gets into the realm of overpacking. And yesterday you brought up the point that when you go backpacking and you have to limit the amount of things that you bring, your insecurities, your weaknesses get shown, and where you're over relying on certain things. And specifically for me, I think that's... What's up?
Sorry, we're going on a walk. We're not taking the dogs.
Okay.
Okay, love you.
Love you too. That'll be my editing cue. But specifically for me, when it comes to my insecurities, I think ultimately it comes down to water, because I always bring out my big giant 6-gallon jug, even if it's one day. And the reason why that's an insecurity for me is because I don't have iodine capsules and I don't have a life straw. I don't have the emergency water that I would need in case I'm out there for an extended period of time. So I always bring more water than it's necessary. That's just if I'm going camping. Now backpacking is a different story. I don't do that. What are your weaknesses, Matt?
I have a bad tendency of probably overpacking for being cold at night. So I'm always concerned that I'm going to get into the night and find out that I'm really cold, and then I can't sleep and I'm uncomfortable, and it's just miserable sitting there waiting for the morning to roll around. But if you bring the right stuff and you've done it enough times, then you start to know, I don't have to pack as much. I just need to have these specific items. And as long as the weather doesn't get, below zero, I'll be comfortable. And that comes with experience. So the gear itself is actually the hindrance, because at one point in time, I just packed and packed and packed, and it was never enough because I never had the right setup for myself. But once I found the right setup for myself, now I know, I need one sleeping bag that has one extra strap to it, because I use a quilt and it wraps around me. So you get a draft if you don't have an extra strap. And then I need the right sleeping pad and a pillow and a hat. And long underwear goes a long way. But that's pretty much it. I could take that down into the 20s very comfortably. And I did it this weekend. We were up on top of the mountain, and it was like, well, it's chilly, but I'm warm. I was very warm, surprisingly. And that's just knowing your equipment, and that's experience. But you're right, overpacking is a way of preventing that from happening, because my bad experiences as a kid then made me insecure about being cold as an adult. If you can prevent some of those bad experiences, like, you're going to get experience so that you're going to go further and know more. But to prevent some of those bad experiences up front, kind of why we're here. We want to point these things out so that other people can learn from our mistakes or our experiences. So overpacking is not a problem, especially if you're going car camping. You have a little bit extra room. The whole kitchen sink, that's a lot, but take a little bit extra water, a little bit extra food, a couple of fun drinks, hot chocolate and apple cider, right? Just a couple of things that are going to make it more comfortable for you. So I think that overall, the starting off, you don't want to really restrict yourself from maybe some conveniences. The thing that you do immediately upon returning from your first trip, and I do this every time I go camping, is to evaluate exactly what I have in the bag or in the car that I didn't use. Why did I put it in there? And was it something that I could have gotten away with not having? And I also then make a mental checklist of the things that I wish I would have had for the next time. And that's kind of case dependent now that I'm getting more adventurous with where I'm going and what I'm doing, because winter camping is different from summer camping, and camping in the Rocky Mountains are different than camping down in Moab Desert. So you have to take that into account a little bit, but you can look at what you didn't use as something that you didn't need. And if you really didn't need it because it wasn't an emergency item, then that's something you can leave behind next time, especially if the conditions are going to be the same and the environment's going to be the same. You're just going to go out and have a same experience with less stuff. Actually makes it less stressful, less work.
And what is an example of an item, or I guess what are some items that people can, especially in the summertime, because you see the big uptick in camping, especially in summer. What are some items in the summer people can leave home that will decrease the amount of crap, more or less, that they bring to the campsite?
So a big one is extra clothes. And there's going to be a lot of people who go, oh my gosh, I must have a different change of clothes for every day. The reality is, they're all going to stink by the time you get home, right? And maybe a change of underwear most days, at least for guys. A different shirt and some socks are good. You don't need multiple jackets, right? You have your rain jacket and you have an insulated, like comfortable, warm jacket. Those are two that I usually take. And sometimes if it's not going to rain, because my insulated one is water resistant, I'll just take the insulated one. But I'm not going to take a hoodie and a sweater and an extra rain jacket, because that's just redundant, and redundant to the point where I won't ever use it, and it actually makes the cleanup way harder. So then when I go, say, backpacking, I only take one pair of pants. I only take the one shirt, and then I have a long sleeve for sleeping in and a long underwear. And I'll have an extra pair of underwear and an extra pair of socks, especially for a one-day trip. I'm going to wear those clothes for about 48 hours and then throw them in the wash. And there's nothing wrong with being a little stinky out on the mountain, specifically because you're going to be working hard and you're going to be doing things to make you smell anyways. You have campfire and getting your hands dirty and just being a part of the environment. That is part of camping. So why try to constantly be taking that stink off when you can't even take a decent shower and really clean yourself in the first place? And then you also learn that later on you can jump into cold water and rinse off a little bit, or you could wash your hands in the stream. You could do all sorts of different things to relieve some of that dirtiness, because that's a good thing. I recommend trying to be as clean as possible, but at the end of the day, you're still going to be more dirty out in the woods than you would be at home sitting on your couch. And that's kind of why a lot of people like going out in the woods, because we have a great excuse to get a little dirty. It's fun to feel refreshed and clean when you finally do get home and take a shower. And so that's one thing that saves me a ton of weight and space in my backpack. And then while car camping, it's a similar thing. I'll take an extra pair of clothes, but I'm not going to take an extra set for every single day that I'm out, because I'm going to get stinky and dirty, and it's just going to be what it is.
Extra clothes. I mean, I've definitely been there, because I go out with the wife, the kid, myself, and it gets to the point where we have an entire duffel bag just packed full of clothes. And I'll look at my wife and I'll be like, Anna, do you really need 3 pairs of clothes? We're only going for one day. She's like, yes, I do, because I gotta look good in the woods. Like, who are you looking good for? Is it for me? Because I don't care. You look good all the time, babe. But I'd say like for that first trip, you can bring extra clothes, but it's still going to be more enjoyable if you don't. Obviously, you get into like a survival situation. You want to have your nice, I guess, jacket, your insulated jacket that is rain resistant and can go down to colder degree weather. But after that, you're getting into the realm of why, right? If it's summertime, why are you bringing out the big old Carhartt? You're just not going to do that because it doesn't make sense. So I think you're right in that it does show people's insecurities. For example, you don't like to be cold. I don't like to be cold either. And so I might find myself bringing 3 quilts and 3 sleeping bags just for me. And the question is just why. And so that's one thing that the wild does for you, is that it starts revealing who you are as a person. It makes you really question where you came from and the things that you've done in your life, because you're taken out of the comfortable environment and you're placed somewhere where, like you said, you're no longer the apex predator, especially here in Montana where there's grizzly bears and there's chances of getting hypothermia, there's grizzly bears, you can fall and get hurt. Those things will show you where you're weak and where you need to work on yourself. And I personally believe that when you start doing that, when you start getting outside, and you have to do this kind of with a purpose, but when you start going outside and you look at those insecurities, you can then go back to the workplace and you can say, okay, I'm insecure about XYZ in the wild. How is this translating into the workplace? And that's going to be different for everybody, but for me specifically, I go into the wild, and I'm one of those people who doesn't like to be dirty, right? And I go into the wild and I start sweating and I get crap all over my hands and I get that wood smoke, and all of a sudden I just feel like I need to shower, I need to be clean. Well, then I go to work, and I work in an environment where I don't take a shower for 1 to 2 days. And I'm forced to not do that. And I just have to think to myself, why do I have to be clean? And how is my attitude in not being clean affecting the other people around me? Because me being grimy this is a personal story, it makes me shorter with people because I don't feel good, I don't look good, and then I put that on somebody else. And so when I get out in the wild, it gives me a chance to practice not being short, for example, with my wife, and then I can apply that to the workplace. But that's just, we can back off of that because that's all about me.
That's very philosophical, actually. Really getting deep into the meanings of what camping influences your life with, which is a great thing. And I think one thing that really drives me to the woods is that we don't live in a world that's been this way very long. This world that we live in is not likely to go back to where it used to be, but for generations and generations before us, they have all utilized a very more rugged lifestyle. You know, the mountain men, they would go out into the woods with a wool blanket and a horse, a couple of pounds of coffee, and they made it work out there all by themselves for months throughout the worst of winters. And that was very impressive. But even to them, they would look at the Native Americans and go, oh, we're not rough and rugged, because the Native Americans do this all day, every day for their entire lives, and they never got a resupply. They get it all on their own. And then there's, sailing across the ocean, and you don't even know if there's land in the direction that you're going. The rough and ruggedness of the people before us is pretty rough and rugged. And this is a reminder to me, going out in the woods and sitting by a fire and eating on some steak, having a cup of subpar coffee, and thinking I'm being rough and rugged is kind of a joke, but it's also a reminder that life is more about being out in the woods. It's more about being in the environment that you're in, being a part of that environment, and being connected with that environment. That might sound a little, I don't know, hippie-ish. But the reality is that that's not a wrong mentality. All of us want to be connected with the stuff around us. That's why we get dogs, right? So we can feel connected with another animal. That's why we get in relationships with our spouses, and then why we build friend groups. What we currently are doing is setting that all up on our phone and doing that virtually and trying to act like we have a good connection that way. But camping takes me to the point of realizing, no, I can't do this virtually. I can't make a good campfire on my phone and find that relaxing to sit by and sip my perfectly good cup of coffee. I have to go out in the woods. I have to experience that. And so what else do I have to experience? If that means that I have to go to the restaurant to interact with people or have people over for dinner, just building those connections and being a part of the environment that I'm in needs to be more of a priority in our lives, because we're missing out on that. And camping reminds me of that every single time that I go out. I'm like, man, can you imagine that those stars are out every single night? Anytime that it gets dark, the stars come out. But I only ever look up at them and admire them while I'm camping.
You just brought up a really good point. And this is going to be like a historical conjecture, so I'm just making this up as I go. But you brought up the Native Americans and the wild men, and how North America was this wild continent, right? And you had this clash of civilization, people who believed their culture coming over from Europe and elsewhere to America, and then they encounter the wild, and they have to not rely upon the resupply and do it all themselves. And I bring this up because those same people, I think there's a reason why the United States is the number one world power right now. And I personally believe it's because of that not relying on the resupply. Because you look at World War II, the United States was able to put millions of people across the ocean and tell them to suck it up and deal with it and figure it out. And I think that has roots in us not being so cultured. Obviously, we have resupply and they had resupply, but there's like this mentality, at least among Americans, that, hey, I can do this on my own. And I think when you go camping, you are tapping into that a little bit. And obviously it depends how far you go with how much you leave at home. But I think that we would all be better off if we actually did go camping, so that we could be connected to that sort of mentality. Will that actually happen when you go camping? I don't know.
That's one of my favorite parts about camping. And I have to say, every time I get in the vehicle and I head out, I think to myself, what are the things that I'm missing? And what are the things that I can't live without? And usually I'm like, I have a water filter, I have my food, and I have my shelter. I'm sure that I'm forgetting something, or I'm going to get up there and realize I need something that I never thought that I needed. And that is where it all becomes fun and enjoyable, because it's now a challenge. That's the non-resupply. I don't have the ability to just fix it in an instant. I have to work through the challenge that I've set myself in. And sometimes that's really bad weather. The wind is howling 50 miles an hour and you're afraid that your tent's going to come flying off the ground. Or your water filter broke and you're not quite sure what that really means in regards to, can I just boil water, or am I supposed to do this, that, or the other? So because I know water's so important, and those are places where you start to have to think for yourself, and you can't make a quick fix on your phone, you can't look it up on the internet. You really do have to just run with it on the fly. And I think your point is spot on, that does make our nation specifically unique. A whole bunch of people jumped on a ship, they sailed over to a completely new continent, kind of like going to a new planet, because nobody that they knew had ever been here, and they had to make it out there on their own. And somewhere deep down inside, those genes still run through us. And that's a great thing. I just don't want to see that go away. And I like to play with that idea by going camping. We went 6 miles into the backcountry hiking this last weekend, and I got up there and found out that the water filter that I was trusting to filter all my water was about shot. There was no water coming out of it, and you got to question if that's good water in the first place, if it's trickling out so slow.
But you could try it,
because it used to go way faster. And I also realized that if it didn't work,
you can keep telling
then
yourself
I have to come up with a solution, and it's a 6-mile hike out with no water if I can't come up with a solution. And so all of a sudden I started to think about all the different things that might have to happen to get the water that's very necessary for life. And it all worked out. The water filter worked out. It just takes more time. It's a little more inconvenient. And then we could boil water. We could make a fire and boil it that way. We didn't have to use all our fuel up. But these are all things that if you don't know them, you might be up a creek without a paddle. And that's why you have to go out there and experience them, and then learn along the way. While you're not out camping or adventuring, you should be taking advantage of the opportunity to learn new things and then go practice them while you're out in the woods. Like, how do I start a fire with flint and steel? Or how do I set up a shelter that doesn't have any poles? I just bring a tarp. Or can I make something that's warmer to sleep on with pine boughs? And I don't know if anybody ever watched my pine needle vitamin C drink of choice, but to limit the amount of stuff that you carry into the backcountry, I recommend going ahead and picking some pine needles and tossing it in hot water, letting it simmer like a tea, and then you strain it out through your teeth. And tastes great. It's kind of citrusy. It tastes great. No, it tastes great. And it's an immense amount of vitamin C. That's what I'm getting at, is that, vitamin C is good for you. It's a necessary thing. It's not necessarily just a vitamin. It's the vitamin that allows you to take in all other vitamins. So you need it. And it comes in the pine needles. So take advantage of the pine needles.
Well, I guess there you have it. Vitamin C. Do your pine needle tea, or just bring the vitamins out yourself. I mean, so what is vitamin C? What is that? Because day to day, I'm not taking vitamin C tablets, and I'm not drinking pine needle tea. So where am I getting vitamin C from? That's the real question.
Yeah, the food that you eat.
So bring food is what you're saying.
Sure. Or you could just try out some new tea. It's great. It's a wonderful flavor.
Yeah. I mean, you could probably go for a month without food. At least most Americans can, because they got so much fat on their body. So just drink the pine needle tea and you'll be fine.
So I just read a news article on an individual who went for a 3-hour hike. He claims he went for a 3-hour hike and got lost for 10 days in the Sierra Nevadas of California. And he survived just barely by drinking a gallon of water out of his boot every day. I'm not sure why he chose to drink the water out of his boot rather than just drinking it from a stream. And also how I would love to know how you get lost for 10 days on a 3-hour hike. But it's not me. It did remind me though that if you don't know what you're doing out in the woods, you might just be stuck for 10 days lost in the woods because you went on a short hike unprepared.
One of the things that we believe here at Empty Spaces Outfitters is that you should be putting the knowledge and skills combo at the forefront of everything that you do, because you never know when you're not going to have the gear, you might not have the food or the water, and I could have told you that you don't need to drink a gallon of water out of your boot before you did that and seemed kind of like a dingus, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know where he's getting the water from, but you also don't have to drink
cheesy water.
You don't necessarily have to drink a gallon of water every day. It's good to drink water. And if you're working really hard, you might drink a lot of water. But a gallon of water is a lot of water. And this is my final tip on that scenario. If you're ever lost in the woods, specifically in an area with elevation change, as in mountains or hills, walk to the bottom and then follow the drainage to the next drainage, and then that drainage to the next drainage. And as you work your way down the water table, you will eventually run into civilization, because water draws people and water always works its way downhill. That's generally a good idea, unless you're in a very unique scenario. But I can't say that I'm aware of any unique scenario outside the United States where that wouldn't be a good idea. And if you know, man, I sure would love to know that, wherever that happens to be.
They say, this would be my last thing too, is that if you're a Texas Ranger, you can survive for 3 whole days off of drinking water out of a hoof print in the sand.
Just
Texas
one
Rangers.
hoof print. Or do you have to follow?
Just one hoof print. Nope, you just do the
Just
one.
the one.
Muddy, nasty water, Texas Ranger can survive.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, so do I. I saw True Grit. He said it. It must be true. They say that Air Force guys like me, we can survive off of 2 gallons of water a day. Beer, alcohol, food. We need it all, actually, to survive. If we don't have that, we might die.
Well, the Air Force is a rough place. So I appreciate your service. Sitting in a chair, air conditioned and all. The Army tries to do our best to keep you in that chair so you don't have to be uncomfortable. And I'll keep doing my best to keep you there.
Yeah, please do so, because I like my chair. It's comfy, it's leather, and I like the AC. Nice, cool 65 degrees. Wear a jacket in the summertime. That's where it's at.
Oh, you're really suffering. Really
Must
suffering.
be nice, right? Yeah, I'm suffering. You can thank me for my service
Thank
now.
you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching Empty Spaces Outfitters Beyond the Grid Adventures. I'm Breven Ingleson. This is Matthew Bent. American heroes, because we just are, right? And if you don't understand that that's sarcasm, that's on you. That's not on me.
I agree.
Yeah, Matt, see, if Matt agrees, then it's fine. But thank you for watching. Until the next time, adios.